This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 729, recorded on Wednesday, July 10th, 2019. Science Freestyle. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight we will fill your head with spiders, sperm, and storage. But first,
TWIS is supported by listeners like you. We thank you for your support. We really couldn't do it without you.
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. The following program frequently contains information considered objectionable by the United States government, some of it anyway, and the companies they represent. So subversive is this information that even top scientists working within government who produced this information are not allowed to speak publicly about it. In fact, when the scientists of the U.S. Geological Survey attempted in March to make this information public, it was rewritten by administration agents to remove any mention of global warming's consequences. Department of Agriculture scientists have seen similar measures, as have the EPA and NASA. While not all the information contained within the following program is of the objectionable nature, listeners are warned in advance that simply knowing the facts about global warming makes you a political and ideological threat to the wealth and welfare of momentarily powerful interests. That said, we will continue to speak science to power because from the Big Bang to the latest advances, we got more science news than Chinese zoos got pandas. Here on This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
and a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We are back again to science up your week with all sorts of amazing science news. Oh my goodness. This week, I can't feel my face. Oh my gosh. That's what you get when you go to the dentist just a couple of hours before you go on the air.
Don't bite yourself. Don't chew on your tongue during the show.
I'm trying to talk here and I'm having some issues with the left side of my face. So anyway, moving forward into the show, we do have science news for you. And tonight, I have stories about crab power, strange places to store your data. And we also have an interview with rapper and science communicator Baba Brinkman coming up in just a few moments. What do you have for us, Justin?
I've got the best diagnosis you can get from a psychologist, the tooth about Denisovans and current humans, the oldest out of African current human ever, global warming, and long live corn.
Corn? What?
Corn. Yeah,
okay, we like corn. Oh, it's interesting that you have a tooth story tonight. Blair, what's in the animal corner?
Oh my gosh. Well, at the very end of the show, I also have a tooth story. A shark tooth story.
A whole tooth and nothing but the I can't feel my face because I went to the dentist.
So we didn't even mean to theme, and yet we have this.
Yeah, here we go.
Things
work out. I also have the aforementioned sperm and spiders, and I also have inherited memory.
You personally?
Oh,
what a great inheritance.
I'm sure we all do. That's what the story's about.
Whoa.
Awesome. Awesome.
That story.
As we jump into the show and give you a few more memories, not inherited, gifted tonight from us, I want to remind you that if you have not yet subscribed to our podcast, you can do so by looking for This Week in Science wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube and Facebook. Our website is TWIS, TWIS.org. All right. I would love now to introduce our guest, Baba Brinkman. He's a rap artist, science communicator, and an award-winning playwright. He's most well known for his series of rap guides, the most recent being the Rap Guide to Consciousness. Baba, welcome to the show.
It's a great pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'd love to know about your whole, I guess, rap history. you started out studying literature, Chaucer, Canterbury Tales, things of that sort, right? High and lofty, and you moved into hip hop, and you transitioned from Chaucer to Darwin and science. And please tell me a story about how this happened.
It's your typical rap star biography, basically.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I may be the only person that went to get an English literature degree because I wanted to, be a more erudite rapper. I studied the Canterbury Tales thinking that it's got to be about the history of rhyme. So rappers are the troubadours of today, telling the stories and being subversive and doing the social commentary in a kind of like lyrical entertainment form. And that's what poetry was throughout the history, not just of English literature, but our species, I would say, because every culture around the world has some like oral narrative tradition, poetic form, whether it's written down or not. And so I had this idea, which is what I wrote my thesis about, that rap and Chaucer were kind of like the bookends of English literature as we know it. And then I wrote a rap version of the Canterbury Tales coming out of my master's. So for several years, I was like the medieval rap guy. And I traveled around. Cambridge University had me as like a literary ambassador to schools. I performed in like 20 British high schools in 2005 and 2006. And like a Cambridge lit professor would be like, 200 14-year-olds somewhere in central UK, and they'd be like, in case you thought the study of Chaucer was a dry affair at Cambridge, we have a young man from Canada here to present the work of Geoffrey Chaucer in a novel art form. Baba Brinkman, take it away. And I'd be like, what's up, yeah? And then just, drop my like rap version of The Wife of Bath's Tale on the kids, and they,
Nice.
what? That's what I did for a living for a couple of years after I did my graduate degree. And then a biologist saw this show, and he was like, great job with Chaucer. Do you think you could do Darwin? And that was his challenge to me, like, do the origin of species like you did the Canterbury Tales in a kind of like theatrical rap form. And I thought that was a great challenge. And I was already a fan of Darwin and evolutionary theory, just undergraduate biology breadth courses, didn't have a degree in it or anything. But he said, don't worry, I'll give you the reading list of what the best pop science and contemporary article sources that you need to get your head around Darwinian theory. This was 2009, the Darwin Bicentennial, and they were organizing the Cambridge Darwin Festival and all these big 200th year anniversaries. Same year was the 150th anniversary of the publication of The Origin of Species. So it was like the big Darwin year. I put together a show called The Rap Guide to Evolution, working with the scientists in England. And his thing was, people get evolution wrong. Evolution means different things to different people. Some people just treat it as like, the evolution of consciousness in the sense of like everyone's becoming more compassionate over time through some kind of like spiritual process or whatever. It gets hijacked. So he was like, we got to talk about natural selection and the specific step, how it works. I want you to send me your rap lyrics before the performance so that I can fact check the representation of evolution in your work. And so we did this whole process where I was sending, and he'd come back with comments. And then I had this collection of songs. And for the, on Darwin Day 2009, I did my premiere of the Rap Guide to Evolution. And this professor's name was Mark Palin. He's a bacterial geneticist. He introduced me by saying, don't worry, this is like, once again, like 200 evolutionary academics at a UK symposium they were organizing. And he was like, don't worry, I've gone through his work and it's very scientifically accurate. In fact, I can say this is the first rap artist in history that is peer reviewed. I was like, hell yeah, that is my brand from now on, peer reviewed rap. And every time I would do a show, I would be like, take it up with me or with the army of scientists that marches behind me. Ironically, like getting into science from having a literature background made me way more gangster. Because I could be on stage and be like, yo, I'm dropping facts. Because when I was doing the Canterbury Tales, I was like, this is my interpretation of a literary text. And, everyone's interpretation has equal validity when it comes to, the representations of the semiotics of the works of blah, blah, blah. But then once I got into science, I was like, there's really a right and a wrong way to do this. And that's kind of that's kind of refreshing in a way. And so I got into empiricism via the performative challenge of talking about evolution in an entertaining context and having to field questions from the audience about what I was rapping and talking about. And then I would freestyle in every show interactively with the audience and whatever they asked me about evolution. So, that was 10 years ago. And, Rap Guide to Evolution was crazy. I performed it live on the Rachel Maddow show back before she was dealing with topics of world import every single night. I performed it I opened for Stephen Hawking at the Seattle Science Festival. And I've shared stages with Richard Dawkins and with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and Bill Nye debuted a rap on one of my records. And so I've done like 5 other rap guides to various topics: consciousness, climate change, anthropology of religion, and the new one is Rap Guide to Culture. So basically this like random British scientist reaching out and saying, can you do the origin of species in rap, has turned into the last 10 years of my hip hop career as a public science communicator.
Nice.
How do you go about picking these, or how have you gone about choosing these various topics for your rap guides? And then when you get into actually creating all of it, like for the Rap Guide for Evolution, it was kind of, okay, you're going to write some songs and then fact check it with somebody else, get the comments, and kind of edit and iterate from there. Is that the process still, or do you have a different creative process?
Yeah, it's pretty similar to how the first one came together. I usually have about 6 months from committing to doing the show to doing a version of it on a stage. And I'm sending drafts of the lyrics to scientists. I now have like a kind of consultant crew of friendly scientists that like what I do, and I can send them lyrics to songs and they can give me commentary, because I feel like the peer-reviewed factor is pretty important for just the brand. And just representing my work as not just my opinion as an artist, but as the consensus view among researchers. Although I can still represent controversies, like in the Rap Guide to Evolution, I do this whole thing about individual versus group level or multi-level selection. And there are legit scientists on both sides of that. But at the same time, like, creationism is dead wrong. There's no legit scientists on either side of that question. And as for which topic I pick, part of it is when I'm working on one, I'll come across something where I'll be like, this is so fascinating and doesn't quite fit in this show. So I'll flag it in a folder and say that maybe that's another show. And then also just talking to people and like, you should do this topic, or what about this? And just getting a sense of like, what are the areas of research that people feel like need bridges to the public? Because if everyone's down with it, I don't think I would do a rap guide to heliocentrism at this point. Because you know what I'm saying? That was Galileo's problem.
I mean, I don't know. You could have a flat Earth rap guide. Rap guide to a round planet. There we go.
And weirdly enough, it's coming back, and it's the symptom of the internet creating these echo chambers of people that can, feed each other conspiracy theories and create the bubble. But I'm more interested in areas where like the scientific community has come to a relatively stable consensus within their group. And if you ask people on the street about it, they don't know that. They're really surprised that it's consensus. So climate change is politically controversial, not scientifically controversial in the slightest. Same with, natural selection being the process that led to all of the apparent design in nature, and there being no need for any supernatural component in the design or complexity of organisms from, single cell to us. A lot of people say, I believe in evolution, but they believe in some theologically guided version, or, God had a role to play of some kind, but of course it happened, but it was divine at some, that was one thing I wanted to get across. And then, we can go through the list where there's some, but I think genetically modified food is an interesting one. You almost never hear a GMO researcher say that there's real major health risks that we should be worried about, and yet it's like illegal in Europe. And so that would be an interesting one for me to do. I think like genetics in general, I find behavioral genetics really fascinating. People that do twin and adoption and genome-wide association studies are coming to interesting conclusions about the degree to which genes influence personality and behavior, and almost no one is ready to accept those findings. But almost no scientists have any doubt about the degree to which certain traits are hereditary at this point. How much heredity plays a role. So, and climate change, origins of religion, I found an interesting one, because people think, oh, religion and science, they're at odds, but actually, like, religion and science are totally compatible, because evolution explains where religion comes from and how it's biologically adaptive in our ancestral environment. So,
by the way, English literature and gangster is there's. I always think of Lord Byron as the original gangster. He would take pains to attack his critics. He dropped the fourth wall, attack the critics, even diss his own label and complaining about his publishers in the middle of it, and would be risque as he wanted to be in telling his stories in rhyme the whole time.
I think I love that you brought up Byron, because those stylistic points are right, but he's also a literary innovator that foreshadows rap, because if you look all through English literature from the last 500 years, almost no poets use polysyllabic rhyme schemes. Eminem, when he's like walking a tightrope without a circus net, popping Percocet, I'm a nervous wreck, I deserve respect, I work a sweat for this worthless check. That's like a multi-syllable pattern that he's repeating, which poets have literally just like wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. It's not hard to think of the idea of combining syllable patterns and rhymes, but poets just never did it, except Byron did it. In his poem Don Juan, he's got rhymes like, and all you husbands of ladies intellectual, have you not found that they have quite henpecked you all? And there's like, I'm serious.
This is the way, but that's the way I picture Byron. I picture Byron laying it down like that when he's writing. And then people are reading it out dry. I'm like, no. He's sitting there with a big crevasse of alcohol and spilling a little bit while he sings.
Like in the Rap Guide to Evolution, I make a fairly explicit case that rap is peacocking all the way down.
Yeah.
Displaying your traits for the purpose of attracting mates and allies, and costly signaling various forms of resource surplus, whether it's cognitive ability or the ability to acquire wealth quickly, starting from nothing. That's basically all of rap. But that Byron was a total peacock of a poet as well, too, wasn't he? Like all about swagger. Yeah. Sexual selection theory, common explanatory power there, I'd say.
Absolutely. Who would you say is the most influential? Is Byron one of the most influential literary people that has influenced you? Or
do you mean on me or on everyone?
You personally, who do you think has influenced your style? And
I'm a disciple of Geoffrey Chaucer. I did my literature surveys from high school through college. I read everybody in the Norton anthologies of English literature, and I decided Chaucer was the man. If I'm going to spend a lot of time on somebody, it's him. And partially that's because he made more out of less than anybody else. Everyone who comes before Chaucer is read as like a historical curiosity, but not as a literary figure. Actually, he's one of the first authorial attributions. We don't know who wrote Beowulf. We don't know who wrote Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. So the sort of major poems before Chaucer, they were either not written in English or they were written anonymously. Whereas Chaucer was like, let's make a literature out of this, like vernacular, colloquial, local poetry form, rather than trying to write in French or in Greek or in Latin. And also just the richness of human nature that's on display in the Canterbury Tales. Like he tells you what people are like, who's mendacious, who's generous, who's a schemer, who's a social climber, who's obsessed with status, who really cares about people, and all. But this is from like lowly cooks to highfalutin, the hierarchy, the aristocracy of the time, and shows that you can be born into any of the stratas of a hierarchical society and have personality traits that should be celebrated or should be denigrated or help you move up or push you down or whatever. And Canterbury Tales is like this grand sort of competition on display for in every level of English society. And I really think like the genius of it, of showing what people are like, and you read the Canterbury Tales and you're like, people are just like that still. Those personality traits are exactly on display in your average rap song, in your average Hollywood movie. People don't change. What changes is culture. What changes is how we pronounce words and what technologies we use to transfer our stories, from YouTube to Spotify, but the creation of the stories and the representation of the natural human dramas and pushes and pulls of how our lives go, that's just like ancient and kind of an evolutionary story in a way, isn't it?
Yeah,
right? Because
that's what
like
it's sounding
Stone
like.
Age minds, modern skulls, right?
Still using them. Someone in the chat room had asked if you're like the science's Lin-Manuel Miranda. Are you the the playwright, the hip hop playwright for science?
No need to elaborate. Me and him are peas in a pod.
That's right.
I'll take that right away. Yeah, that's a good one to wear.
Well, I'll, if you'll allow me a little backdrop story. I actually met Lynn at the Edinburgh Fringe in 2005 when him and I and the group that was doing his now soon to be Broadway show, Freestyle Love Supreme, we were two of the only 3 rap or hip hop related theater shows at the Fringe that year. So it was kind of like this brand new thing of doing hip hop and theater and mashing them up. And I remember talking to him and being like, he was like handing out flyers on the street for his show and stuff. He happened to create something that went fairly globally viral, and I'm proud of him for it. And Hamilton is a work of genius. But we've been working in the same space for the last 15 or so years. And I haven't achieved my Hamilton moment yet, but I'm not giving up hope. And I definitely see us as like coming at theater and literature from a hip hop perspective in a similar way, for sure.
Yeah, from a very similar angle and perspective. You could use that. Science's Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yeah, I just need to. I get him to sign off on that first.
Yeah, exactly. Coming from your literary background and getting into science communication, do you feel like it's a disadvantage or an advantage when you dig into these topics?
I think it's a real advantage because in a way I'm more native to the humanities and the arts, and I kind of can take the perspective of a tourist, like, isn't this amazing, this thing that scientists found out? And then where's the relatability factor? And that's what storytelling and literature is all about. So I'm always looking for that, like how would a person react to this in the context of their lives? And I mean, I think it helps a lot to have that background. And also, there's the culture war between the arts and sciences that you can see in lots of universities where the departments don't talk to each other, right? The like biologists and the sociologists are not friends. It's like I go university, I do college campus performances a lot, and I talk to people about what it's like, and this is a real thing where there's anti-science mentalities in some departments. Is there anti-arts mentalities in science departments? I don't really find that so much, actually. I feel like there's like a fear of science, of it being some kind of totalitarian force that's going to like take the magic out of the arts, or diminish us somehow, or take the meaning out of life if it explains things like creativity and inspiration and our sense of wonder. But that culture is my culture because I studied humanities, and I was always kind of like, there's got to be some miscommunication going on here, because I never took that mentality towards science. But now when I do my shows, I can fully represent let's say like the paranoia about science dramatically in the show, and then break it down and address where I think it goes wrong, and try to be a bit bridge builder in the sort of E.O. Wilson Consilience sense of like science and the arts should be friends. But then the sort of subtext of that is just like when I said like religion and science can be friends because science eats religion and explains it. I think it's the same, it's kind of the same with the arts. Don't worry, the arts and the science can get along just fine because science wins. But it's kind of, I don't feel like that diminished. Just like knowing that we evolved to like eating sweet foods or nutritious foods because the calories were adaptive for us to have, and therefore our pleasure sensors were calibrated towards orienting us towards certain kinds of food and not others. Knowing that doesn't make food taste less good. And knowing where the arts or where human emotions come from, or sociability, or all the things that we love to celebrate in life, knowing where that comes from doesn't make it less enjoyable either. Totally fascinating to explore. I'm in the humanities tribe, and I'm kind of like, it's like Romeo and Juliet. I'm crossing over. I'm like trying to find a way to build the bridge back to where I came from.
Wherefore art thou, science? There we go. Yes. Yeah. I'm always fascinated with, especially now, machine learning and artificial intelligence, and kind of this recursive investigation of our own appreciation of creativity and the arts, especially now there are all sorts of algorithms and AIs that are producing music, that are creating artistic works of various kinds. We have computer programs that can write for us. Hi, I don't even have to be a freelance writer anymore. I could have a computer do it for me in my sleep. I mean, there are so many. If we can create these things that can do the things that we appreciate in a way, kind of like the Turing test, that we don't recognize as synthetic, then what can that tell us about our own evolution of appreciating those things? I don't know. I think it just gives us more and more understanding. I'm right there with you.
Well, I'll tell you one thing it does is it also separates the arts into the machine learnable categories and the non-machine learnable categories, which is like too bad for the classical music composers and the abstract painters. But so far the stand-up comics and actors and there's some forms, like I've never heard good rap music. I've never heard rap music, period, produced by an ML program. But the classical music is deadly. Like experts can't tell the difference between Bach and a machine learning emulation of it. So what that just tells you is that rap is a far more complex and intelligent art form. Because it's so much harder to emulate. Get on that, Google.
Get on it, yeah. And also the idea of, like you mentioned, humor. It's one that hasn't been approached well by machine learning yet either,
or by most Homo sapiens.
Yeah. Do you try to approach things? Say if you're composing something related to climate change, very serious topic these days. Do you approach it with humor? Do you add these things in during your process?
Yeah, I mean, you have to, because the bottom line is I do a show off Broadway here in New York. I've done it like 80 times in the last few years, and it's called The Rap Guide to Climate Chaos. And somebody's paying $40 for a ticket, and they're going to sit there for 80 minutes. Like, it can't be pulling teeth. It has to be fun. How do you make climate change fun? Because it's such a heavy topic, and it's so much guilt associated with it. And really, like, most of the calls to action associated with climate change are just nothing but guilt trips, which is probably the reason why they don't work. You know what I'm saying? Like, admonitions for people to live more sustainably are kind of like admonitions from your mom to clean your room. Like, how are you supposed to get excited about that? So that's one of the things that I mine for humor in the Rap Guide to Climate Chaos, is I'm kind of honest about the fact that I am a world touring rap artist that cares about climate change. But hey, guess what? I am not going to quit my job for the climate. I love what I do. And if everyone feels like me, which I think almost everyone does, i.e. if you love your job, you're not going to quit it for the climate, then we got a problem, because everybody's willing to consume less, but no one is willing to produce less if they love their job. If they hate their job, they're like, fire me for the climate. I don't care. I was going to quit anyway. But if they're doing something they're passionate about, they're going to keep doing it and try to scale it up. And if that is attached to massive emissions increases along with the scaling, which is basically how capitalism works, because it's not decoupled from emissions, then that's the core of the problem right there. But by saying, I'm not quitting my job for the climate, I'm like, when it comes to rhyming, I would not stop this show to save the climate. I'm rocking till they make me stop. Climate change or not, I make it hot. And then I turn to the audience and I'm like, what do you do for a living? Oh, you're an author? Hopefully you don't become J.K. Rowling, or you'll be really bad for the climate. I wish you failure. And man, people go crazy over that, because they're like, it makes everyone reflect on what they do and what they are and aren't willing to give up. And also like, oh, does anyone here have kids? Great. You just doubled your CO2 emissions. Like, the things that we care about the most are the things that are the biggest drivers of climate change. Like, save the climate, kill your dog. So that like, this is my argument for why there's nothing but carbon pricing that'll get us out of this.
That's exactly, and that's why I've redefined this as not as global warming, which sounds like a hot day, or climate change, which sounds like a setting on the thermostat, but chlamydia, so that people will know it's a disease that our planet can have if we don't wear the carbon caps.
I love that. I was hanging out with a researcher, Jamie Jones at Stanford, and he looks at the effect of climate change on disease spread. because of the
mosquitoes
temperature changes in the ranges of human movement and animal movement. And one of his papers is about how climate change is affecting the spread of gonorrhea in certain areas because previously segregated population groups have now been spreading to forage for resources more. And you can literally just like track the STD rate along with the carbon emission escalation. So, that you hit the nail on the head with that one.
You have an album that is dropping tomorrow. Can you give us a little rundown of what it took to put it together and kind of what the overarching theme is?
Sure. So the record is called See from Space, and it's about the scientific perspective on so many things that are happening in the world. So there's evolution tracks, there's climate change tracks, there's stuff about just like reason and skepticism and how we should reject the idea of this being a post-truth era. And that record came together over the past few years. Several of the songs were commissioned by scientists. Some of them are about Trump and the Trump administration climate policies. And there's a thing called the National Climate Assessment that comes out every year, and it's it's by federal government scientists, and it's totally a good sort of assay of U.S. based climate impacts, economic and ecological and human. And so I've done a couple of tracks that are like summarizing that to Trump, trying to like explain to him why he should care, even if he doesn't seem to. And and then a bunch of the tracks are just like science raps that I made for the nerd posse out there. There's not a rap guide. Most of my albums are a rap guide to a topic, and this one is just like science rap for the masses.
Nice.
I love it. The few of them are available as videos now, and one that I came across earlier today is "Confessions of a Skeptic." And so, do you consider yourself a skeptic?
I do. I would only put the footnote on that by that I mean scientific skepticism, not the various bastardizations of the word. Like some global warming people. Climate deniers will call themselves, I'm a climate skeptic, but that's not what skepticism means.
No.
It means you don't accept claims unless you have a rational basis with either reason or evidence or probabilistic inference to believe in things. I put provisional beliefs on things unless I've seen good evidence to agree with them. But confessions is because, saying that is almost like an argument starter with a lot of people. Because people want to accept claims on face value and think that opinions matter to more than just the opinion holder, and that's why Darwin said, like, yes, I believe all species have a common ancestor, and admitting it is like confessing to a murder. And I think that goes for a lot of skeptical positions today that are not politically acceptable, but pretty much seem to be true based on the evidence.
Yeah. So I'm going to play just a little bit of that track right now, if it's okay.
Cool.
Go ahead.
You got a picture like a revival tent.
I confess it, I'm a skeptic. I believe in the scientific method. I believe in reason and evidence, and things being tested. I'm really not trying to be rude when I tell people I don't believe you. I believe you believe it to be true. I want to see some peer reviews. Human beings are oh so deceivable, oh so promiscuous with what's believable. I'm old-fashioned, I just want to see if it's repeatable with a mechanism that's conceivable. Don't dismiss this as if I'm just a hater. If you make the claim, you're the instigator. I just want to see if that claim could be replicated in the presence of a skeptical investigator. I'm not scoffing, if it's true that's awesome. And until proven, my thoughts are agnostic, open-minded, seeking truth, hoping to find it, trying to light a candle instead of groping blindly. I confess it, I'm a skeptic. I believe in the scientific method.
Whee!
Nice.
There we go. That's my testimony.
Nice.
Testimony. I'm a skeptic. Yeah, I have always had. I guess it's because of the various ways that people use the word skeptic. I've always had a reticence to confess. I say I'm a scientist. I'm not a skeptic. I'm a scientist. I look at things rationally. But I love the jazzy background in it.
Well, I think it's a fraught term. I kind of, when I made that song, I was like, am I really ready to own this? Because a lot of people associate skeptic with cynic, and in some contexts it can mean the same thing. But I think I don't know if you guys have interviewed Michael Shermer, if you have any interaction, but I think the Skeptic Society has fairly clear definitions of what they mean by skepticism, and they started out with debunking claims about Bigfoot and aliens and the Loch Ness monster and weeping virgin statues and things like that. And come on, are we not all skeptics about those things, right? And then they take that same process of let's go do firsthand inquiry, which is basically just putting the scientific method into everyday life, and then apply it to now lots of other topics, including global warming. So, Michael Shermer does a feature in the video for that track. And, he actually reached out to me and challenged me, like, could you capture the arguments of scientific skepticism in a rap song? And then that's the product. And, I copped to it. But the funny thing is, I was not a skeptic when I first started writing my Rap Guide to Evolution show. It was the process of researching and trying to like find the entry points into this topic that made me re-examine a bunch of my claims and be like, oh, maybe I won't take this echinacea anymore because the evidence base isn't really holding up for it. I started out trying to debunk creationism and ended up debunking homeopathy. Whoops. But that's where I landed.
Tangent, but okay. You're like, hello, brain. There we work. Do you have any other songs that that you want me to share before we go to a break?
Okay, sure. I'm gonna get you to play this one just because it's it's a totally different style from any music I put out before. But check out TVOL Remix, and maybe I'm kidding myself, but I hope some dance floor DJs in Ibiza are gonna play this track and get people like fully sweating rave style to some science rap.
Okay. Challenge.
Lines on your family tree unbroken. This fuel like TVOL. Take a look and see for yourself. Selection. Natural, artificial, and sexual. I'm looking at Darwin to figure the form of an organ adaptive or vestigial. Everything comes with a precedent. Genetic and cultural replicants. Selection is when one of them is successful at passing it on to the next again. Selection. It's like clocking an extra dimension. It's like Neo perceiving the matrix. Increasing your depth of perception. Selection. The reach of it's awesome. From pollinators and trees when they blossom. From the beak of the finch to people who went from quadrupedal to walking. Selection. Don't be afraid of it. Life evolved. No one created it. In the genome of every organism, nature is always mutating and changing it. Selection. It's a question of comprehension. Some people can see it and study it. Others believe it's the devil's invention. Selection, science is settled. Every religious objection's been vetted and rejected. Selection is happening. The only question is in which direction. Selection. Embrace it for all of its benefits. It's paving the way for advances in everything from robotics to medicine. Selection at multiple levels. Genetic and cultural symbols. Selection selected your mental capacity to select and disseminate info. So tell me why rap is so cocky. Versace. Selection that sexual tends to go bling when the signal is costly. EVOLUTION. Look at the world with 2 eyes open. This feel like TVO. Time to read it.
My 5-year-old daughter loves that song and gets down to it.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I'm gonna send it to my DJ friends. So, hey, check this out. No, I like
Kiki,
that. That's fun.
Kiki, that's not a throwaway comment. Kiki has a vast network of DJ friends.
Awesome.
Vast. Not really.
It is.
No.
Someone's going to be on the dance floor. It's going to be just nothing but Skrillex, and then that song's going to come in, and they're going to be like, huh. And then they'll just be like, yeah. And suddenly, like, the Darwinian inculcation is going to just be, like, it'll be insidious. I love it.
I want to hear it at one of those summer festivals, Yes, it'll be great. Oh, this is so much fun. Before we go to the break, I would love to know from you where people can find you, and should they take a break right now, where can they find you? Where can they find information about your album and all this stuff that we've been talking about?
So the album is only at Bandcamp. BabaBrinkman.bandcamp.com. It hasn't even come out on Apple Music and the rest yet. I just loaded it up yesterday. And my general stuff is at BabaBrinkman.com, and that's this, BabaBrinkman, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of the above. And also Rap Guide is me. So if you type in Rap Guide into Google, anything that's called a rap guide, chances are I made it.
Fantastic. All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break. Baba, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You're going to stick with us for a little while?
I will.
Maybe do some sciencing. What kind of science? The science is coming in just a moment. Stay tuned for more This Week in Science.
We can't explain the things we've heard more than.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this episode of This Week in Science. We love that you are sharing part of your week with us and the science and the fun that we bring. Oh, my goodness, it's so much fun. If you appreciate us every single week, maybe consider beyond subscribing, which you can do easily by going to TWIS.org and clicking on the orange subscribe button. Maybe consider supporting us and helping us do what we do, and maybe even helping to grow what we do. As I get my websites loaded, hey, Blair, what have you been doing lately? You had something you wanted to talk about.
Yes. This past Monday, I was a guest on the Daily Tech News show. That was so much fun. So if anyone wants to hear that episode, we talked about actually the story we talked about last week on this show about lab cultured meat. And we kind of dug into the tech side of that and how people are kind of wary of certain technologies getting up in their business. So it was a very interesting conversation. You can check that out in iTunes. You can look for DTNS Daily Tech News Show. And the name of the episode was Meet Your New Meat. So that came out on Monday. You can also go to dailytechnewsshow.com and listen to the show or watch the show there as well. I also, in our after show, was tasked with at some point making a veggie bagel dog. So I have to write into TTNS if I ever actually get that done, complete with pictures, and let them know what I thought of it.
All right. I'm looking forward to finding out about your veggie bagel dog adventures. If everyone else out there is looking forward to it, I'm sure that Blair will write about it in our newsletter as well. You can subscribe to our newsletter if you want. If you don't get a pop-up window when you go to twis.org that asks you if you would like to subscribe, you can send me an email at kirsten@thisweekinscience.com, and I will put you on our newsletter list so you can find out about Blair's sciencey adventures in veggie bagel dogs. For everyone else, if like I was saying, if you are interested in supporting the show, you can head to twis.org, where there is a button, yellow, donate. Click on it. It will take you to a PayPal interface that will let you donate an amount of your choosing, single time or on a recurring basis. If you're interested in supporting us on a more recurring basis, you can click on our Patreon link. That will take you to our Patreon community, where you click on the red Become a Patron button and choose the level of your support. At $10 a month or above, we will thank you by name at the end of the show. That's right. That long list of names I read off at the end of the show, those are people supporting us on Patreon. Don't you want to be like them? Come on, click that button. Support This Week in Science. We also have a Zazzle store. If you're interested in our merchandise, you can go to our Zazzle link. It'll take you to that store where there are t-shirts and all sorts of things with artwork from Blair's Animal Corner catalogs. And I forgot to tell you, for the Patreon supporters, if you are supporting at $25 a month or above, you get a t-shirt. And I just got brand new t-shirts in. They're pretty great. So if you want one of those babies.
What? I haven't even seen this t-shirt.
New t-shirts. Yeah,
I haven't even seen new t-shirts yet.
Yeah. Anyway, everyone, we really appreciate your support.
Do you have one? Can we see it? Is it? I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, but I'm super excited. I didn't know we had a new shirt.
They're in a box.
Yeah, what? Let's open the box.
Stories up.
Oh, you're teasing me. This
I
is
am
terrible.
I'll this week. It's a verbal tease.
All
Next
right.
week, I'll show you a shirt.
Okay.
Okay. Cliffhanger. Or you can just click on that support button at Patreon and you'll get one in the mail.
Before I even see it.
Before Justin even sees it. Then you can text Justin and say, hey, I got the shirt. You don't have it.
Yeah, everyone who gets a t-shirt, tweet Justin a picture of it
it'll
to make
it'll
him
be forever
jealous.
before I get one too. Oh,
Yep.
man.
Thank you for your support. We really could not do this without you.
Can't explain things you've heard more than.
And we're back with more This Week in Science.
Yeah, we are back. And the time now is for that portion of our show that we know and love as This Week in What Has Science Done For Me Lately?
Ooh. Oh, Blair, going all in.
Going for it. It's a short one again this week. Rodrigo Rossler wrote in to say, what has science done for me? It helped me plan my vacations well in advance so I could come to Argentina to watch the eclipse. Also, no polio.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a great one.
Not having polio is
Here,
often an
no
overlooked
polio.
benefit.
Hey, is that a new cheers? We should all do no polio. Chink.
Chink. No polio. Yes. Thank you, science. Also, for those people who were able to plan their holiday to go to Argentina to catch the only solar eclipse of 2019. What a wonderful vacation for you, your families, and what an experience made possible by science. Yes. Science is great in so many ways. If you have ideas about how science helps you or other people that you know, send us a note, a letter, a sonnet, a song. That's right. You could put it in rap, just like Bubba Brinkman. You can send them to us at our Facebook page. Send us a message there, Facebook, This Week in Science, or you can send me an email, Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com. We want to keep filling this segment of the show with letters from you. All right, let's talk about science. You ready?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, we have some stories. I've got a story about crab power rays.
Yeah. What
Crab
are
power.
you talking about?
It's a new superhero. Crab
That's
power.
right.
Power crab.
Power crab. No, it's not. I'm talking about the Crab Nebula.
Oh.
What I'm talking about. And by association, a group of Chinese and Japanese astrophysicists have been looking for high energy gamma rays. And now gamma rays, especially high energy with up to 450 trillion electron volts. This is,
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot. This is a lot. And we've never seen them before. We have never found gamma rays at such high energies, photons of light, energized and accelerated to this high frequency and to this high of an energy rate that have made it to us in a way that we could detect them. Part of it is detecting them is hard, and then telling them apart from just cosmic rays, which are also very high energy, is very difficult. Now, the cool thing about gamma rays is that gamma rays, they travel in a straight line. They're like, pew, I'm a laser beam, but I'm not. I'm a gamma ray. Then they get where they're going. So gamma rays are really neat because if we can detect them, especially very high energy gamma rays, then knowing where they came from, we can triangulate back to their source and find out where they came from to be able to go, okay, what's going on over there that would create such high energies? Whereas cosmic rays, they get twisted and spun around by magnetic fields. So they hit, and it's kind of hard to figure out where the cosmic rays originated from. The detectors for these gamma rays were spread out across 66,000 square meters on the Tibetan Plateau, so very high elevation. And these were basically, these are water wells that were dug beneath the surface of the Tibetan Plateau. So high elevation, but still underground, encased in earth, and then using water as the detector. And they would go into the water kind of and then be able to hit the detectors where they could then figure out the timing and the energy of the strikes and reconstruct, like I said, the trajectory. So this team, the Tibet ASG Gamma team, had 64 locations around this town with these wells that were meters below the ground. And they found the world's highest sensitivity to gamma rays in this region, in the 100 tera electron volt region. And they looked from February 2014 to May 2017, caught 24 gamma rays that ranged from 100 tera electron volts to 450. And they all came from the Crab Nebula. Da, da, da. So it's like, oh, the Crab Nebula, what is going on there? Well, the Crab Nebula is this place where there's a lot of energy right now. It is, as we know it, I guess the universe is, to this point that we have seen, most powerful natural electron accelerator outside of our galaxy. We think that there might be other very strong high energy gamma ray sources like supermassive black holes at the center of galaxies, but we haven't seen them yet. And so we need more observatories to be able to discover what's going on, where these things are coming from, and be able to get a picture of high energy in our universe.
Yeah, I'm suspecting there's a intergalactic EDM event that we just aren't invited to. It's just a big party going on. They're in the Crab Nebula, and yeah, we didn't get tickets.
Yeah, the Crab Nebula is a remnant of a supernova that happened 1,000 years ago. And so this remnant is still emitting the most energetic light that we have ever seen. That, I think, is what is also very fascinating. Even though these supernovas are supposed to be these incredibly intense events that release all sorts of energy, and you'd think that would in itself would be the huge thing, but this is the aftermath, where the energy released by the supernova is still burning up gas, is still forming things. Things are still dynamic within this area of space, even 1,000 years later. It's probably a very large supernova. I'm just imagining.
Aren't they supposed to have like a critical size limit?
Yeah,
That was the whole 1A candle.
Right, so they don't go black hole, right? If they go supernova and they don't go black hole. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like supposedly
I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, there's a neutron star at its heart that is probably the source of all this stuff. The source of it. It's extreme. Yes. Moving on to another story. I wanted to talk a little bit about data storage, because that's always fun. Where do you want to store your data?
On a floppy disk? Oh, no, wait.
I'll
Take half of a JPEG on this floppy disk.
Wait, you want me to take my data and you want me to throw it in a lake? All right, I'll take my thumb drive and I'll throw it in the lake behind the... That's not what I was supposed to do? What are you talking about then?
Well, this research is actually closer to throwing your data into a lake than it is putting it on a floppy disk. Researchers at Brown University, funded by DARPA, have been looking into alternative data storage methods. And we know how molecular storage methods are panning out so far. We've seen DNA be used to potentially store terabytes of data. We've got people looking into the storage capacity that we know can store so much information. It can make people, these molecules of DNA, right? But they went a step further. They said, well, DNA it's great, but it's this kind of big molecule. Why don't we think about the other aspects of data storage and manipulation in biology? And so they turned to the metabolome. The metabolome is that set of all molecules that's involved in managing an organism's metabolism. And so it's little molecules, it's RNA, it's little compounds, it's all sorts of little bits and pieces of things that interact with each other. And so they published a paper in PLOS One this last week about their proof of concept experiment in which they were able to store up to very small, still like 2 kilobyte file images in this kind of liquid metabolome architecture. And what they did is they set up, it deals with bits and bytes. And one of the things that they do is, so you have something like glutamic acid, or you have tryptophan. And if that's present, it's a 1. If it's not present, it's a 0. So you have ones and zeros, binary, just like in so many data storage forms, right? It's binary data storage. And then the different compounds work together to create a matrix of information that encodes how the image is displayed. And so they then have a set of wells that they put these little drops of metabolome liquid in, and then the computer can then read out using mass spectrometry what things are present and what aren't, and reconstruct the image at a later date. So it's kind of like a it sounds like code breaking. You know, we've got ABC is 0101, whatever. You know, you've got a code that you're going to set up in a particular way, and the computer then has to read the code to create the image, which, it's a fairly basic concept. The only little twist in this is that, unlike DNA, which is pretty stable in its molecular form, it's kind of locked down until molecules come in to open it up for transcription and translation, right? The metabolome, it's so dynamic. It's like one molecule's like, hey, I've got a little hydrogen ion over here. And another one's like, hey, I got a hydroxyl over here. Let's combine and let's do stuff. And so there's all sorts of molecular manipulation that happens that could alter the data if you're not careful. Mm-hmm. But this also could be a perk if you're taking it into consideration. So it's potentially a very interesting method of data storage, still at the beginnings.
So somebody's still going to have to someday explain to me the benefits of storing information in these ways. Like, for instance, I'm working in genetic research, where we are the giant data sets that we have are of the genetic code. And I don't think it would be sufficient to say, hey, we should do all this sequencing and store this data somewhere. If we were like, oh, we would store it as DNA, then why did we bother?
Yeah.
We already had that to begin with. What are we even doing? We're just replicating the data and storing it in now 2 places. You have to be able to access, manipulate, and work with. And that always becomes the tricky part. With any of these systems or any of these ideas.
You kind of need espionage context to think of a use for it. Like, we're trying to smuggle all of the terabytes of data out of some fortress, and all other means of communication are shut down. So you like give somebody a cold and the virus has it written in its DNA or something.
Or like, this is just my travel shampoo, but actually some important data.
Just a can of shaving cream with a few dinosaur DNA fragments in it.
Yeah, no big deal.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting. I mean, the point is, at what point does it become useful? Is it only in that, like you say, espionage sense, or is it always going to be proof of concept? Is it always going to be this thing that we could use to store lots of data, but it's also going to take, refrigeration, and it's going to take all of these things to keep it stable?
Oh,
for
you know,
any useful period of time. Yeah.
I can think of another context in which suddenly I'm on board with this, which is if it starts looking like geopolitically like this civilization is not going to continue, and there was a project to put Wikipedia as a bunch of junk DNA, I would actually sign on for that, because somebody in 1,000 years after the next civilizations, after we get through World War III and all that, imagine how valuable it would be to pull Wikipedia out of the cells of somebody.
But only that information that was pertinent to mice, because that's who will be
Right,
ruling
right.
the
Yes,
planet in the
mice.
future. They're just scanning for the human stuff. Oh, good. Here's a mouse research project. Perfect.
Yes.
They did what to us in the lab?
Our history. Oh my goodness. Our mousy peoples, our mousy brethren. This is This Week in Science. Hey, Justin, what'd you bring?
Okay, so we talked recently about the rediscovery of a 160,000-year-old Denisovan jaw that was discovered in the 80s, but not properly identified. Now identified as Denisovan, and now that jaw is contributing to our understanding of human ancestry and solving an evolutionary mystery, all with a single tooth. Study, which appears in the Journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, centers on a 3-rooted lower molar. That molar with 3 roots is kind of an anomaly. It's not something most humans have. It's a very rare trait that occasionally pops up, primarily in modern current human Asians. A trait thought to have evolved after the dispersion from Africa. New research is obviously pointing into a different evolutionary path. Quotey voice here of Sarah Bailey. The trait's presence in the fossil suggests that it's both that the trait is older than previously understood, and that some modern Asian groups obtained the trait through interbreeding with Denisovans. Sarah Bailey is a professor in anthropology at New York University and paper's lead author. Previous study published in Nature, they were concluding that the Denisovans had occupied this Tibetan plateau long before humans had arrived in the region. But this is obviously showing that they weren't gone when the humans first arrived there. And now this is a 160,000-year-old specimen where they've got the tooth from. So it doesn't mean that specimen is it's way too old to have interacted with the current humans. It would have to be something more recent, because the oldest we've found of a current human in the fossil record is about 50,000 years old. Although we've found archaic DNA in Neanderthals that hinted that humans might have left Africa at different times, much earlier than that more recent fossil record of about 50,000 years. My next study, a 210,000-year-old current human skull has been identified in a cave in Greece, making it the oldest human ever to have left Africa by about 150,000 years more than the one that they previously thought. That just happened today. This came out. So this is obviously changing some of our understanding about how modern humans populated Eurasia. What's also interesting about this is that there is also a Neanderthal that was identified from the same cave that is 170,000 years old, meaning this human was there 40,000 years before that, meaning human and Neanderthal interactions may go back a lot further than we thought, which we already kind of know, but this was from a Neanderthal DNA sample where we saw an archaic current human somewhere in Siberia in northern Russia, right? So that's far away from Greece, but this is a good clue that we were pretty mobile with our running aroundness. So oldest skull of a current human out of Africa, now 210,000 years old.
That's super old.
We're old.
That's super old. We're very old. And a new study published in Psychiatry Research has concluded that psychiatric diagnoses are scientifically worthless as tools to identify discrete mental health disorders. Publication team at Psychiatry Research then cleared their calendars of all meetings, boxed up the belongings from their desks, and have not been heard from since. This real study, led by researchers from the University of Liverpool, involved detailed analysis of 5 key chapters of the latest edition of the widely used diagnostic, the DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. They looked at specifically schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depressive disorders, anxiety disorders, trauma-related disorders. This DSM we've talked about sometimes on the show provides a common diagnostic language for then health professionals to have a language and a list of health problems and symptoms to then make diagnoses from. Main findings of the research were psychiatric diagnoses all use different decision-making rules. There's a huge amount of overlap in symptoms between the diagnoses. Almost all the diagnoses make the role of mask the role of trauma and adverse events in the individual's life and make it more of an inherent thing. And the authors conclude that the diagnostic labeling represents a disingenuous categorical system. Lead researcher Kate Alsop, University of Liverpool, says, although diagnostic labels create the illusion of an explanation, they are scientifically meaningless and can create stigma and prejudice. Hope these findings will encourage mental health professionals to think beyond diagnoses and consider other explanations of mental distress, such as trauma and other adverse life experiences. So what I also, this is Professor John Reed, University of East London. Perhaps it is time we stop pretending that medical sounding labels contribute anything to our understanding the complex causes of human distress or of what kind of help we need when distressed. So I've talked about this a little bit on the show in the past, but everything that is in this DSM identifies things in terms of deficit and disorder, and by default actually implies that there's a specifically healthy version of human mental health that exists, right? But they never describe that, reference it, or even address it. But there are enough deficiencies that everyone's covered, because there's also sort of a non-specificity in terms of severity, meaning anyone can have a mild version of multiple disorders at any given time. And the way they're framing it in the first place as disorders is almost saying these aren't legitimate ways of being a human in the first place. So we could rename them all. Bipolar disorder could be intense emotional perspective ability. Right? Okay. Yeah, I have the ability to intensely still, but perceive different emotional perspective. Depressive disorders could just be higher standards of happiness than other people. Trauma-related disorders, traumatic response is not a disorder. It's a perfectly natural reaction to having been going through some serious stuff. So we would call it perfectly normal trauma reactions. Like all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I have perfectly normal trauma reactions. Okay, that I should be able to deal with better than a disorder that makes me. Attention deficit disorder doesn't mean your attention is disordered or at all in the deficit. No, in fact, it's probably heightened. Attention multitasking superpower. That's what that is. That's what you've got. Your mind is tracking a highway of inputs all at once. Anxiety disorder, heightened risk anticipation ability, right? Maybe just slightly more informed on the odds than the average other person. So like there has always been a negative driver behind addressing things that people go through in life. I think I love this article for pointing it out, for addressing it, for pointing out the vagary of it, of these diagnoses, and also pointing out the fact that there isn't a suggestion for applying therapy behind it either. Which means you have it's like having a troubleshooter that you're following to fix a problem on the car, and then it just stops. Okay, wait. Okay, I got the carburetor off. I lifted the thing. I undid the seal. And I removed the bolt, and it stopped right there. That's it. That's all.
I think it's important what you're bringing up and what the study has looked at, but I also think there's a side to this that's really important to acknowledge, and that is that certain of these issues that people have are completely debilitating, right? But I think you're right. There's an issue with the name there. So maybe instead of a disorder, they have an oxytocin deficiency, or
why is it a deficiency?
That, right?
So this is the
well,
thing.
because that is causing them, for certain people, to not be able to leave their house or their bed. To say that that's not an issue is
no.
Also not addressing.
Wait a second. Wait a second. I'm not saying don't address a problem. I'm not saying ignore a problem. I'm saying legitimize the fact that that's how some people are, and that's, it's not you don't have to negatively reinforce all of these things. And it was, I think, born of an age when we were looking for defects in humans. There isn't a perfect human. That first has to be acknowledged. And yeah, that's why the other day we were talking about OCD, heavily debilitating, but I was pointing out then too, it's kind of a coping mechanism, isn't it? If somebody has this tremendous fear and has to go through these actions, it is a coping mechanism. Now, is there a better way to do it than they're doing? Is there treatment available? If so, make that part of it. Don't label people as being disordered. People can be different.
It adds a weight and a potential guilt that can feed back and create a worse problem than what they're starting out with. And I like I really like the last sentence of their abstract for this paper. And they say, a pragmatic approach to psychiatric assessment, allowing for recognition of individual experience, may therefore be a more effective way of understanding distress than maintaining this commitment to the disingenuous categorical system. So it's like, instead of coming always from the outside, it's understanding, like they're trying to say, that there is many times this influence of personal trauma that has had an influence. Personal experience has played a role in shaping the mind of the person. Yes. And then there's also going to be individual differences in neurotransmitters, brain chemistry, how things are, neural networks, how they're set up. And so that there needs, I like that they are saying there just needs to, and what you're saying, Justin, that we need to address this and that something needs to change. We don't know exactly what it is yet, but we need that.
It kind of takes, that has the opportunity, depending on how you go about it, of destigmatizing quote unquote getting help in general, right? So I firmly believe every single human should see a therapist at least some point in their life. You'll learn something about yourself. You'll feel better. You'll feel healthier from just being able to talk to somebody freely about how your brain works. Because, as we discussed at the OCD conversation last week, that I do a couple of things where she was like, that's close to it.
Everybody has a little bit of something that's close, like Justin was saying, a little bit of something somewhere.
The vagary of these descriptions and the mildness that you can attach to the severity. And the fact that we've all met somebody who has gotten this diagnosis, whether they did it themselves, which is most of the time, or from an actual, where they're like, I have this, and then weight their perspective on their life of this thing. Now it's, and I truly believe that if it was a positive thing, they'd be like, I got this, check it out. This is what I do. This is my deal.
Let me also, though, say that just as an extra little caveat on this, with particular situations, like people on the autism spectrum, giving a name to an issue that they are having is actually extremely empowering. So in certain cases, being able to give a quote unquote diagnosis and being able to give them a reason for a way they feel other is actually really helpful in their ability to cope and learn and grow. So there are certain situations where it is very helpful for their own needs. But I understand overall, right, when we're talking about these other issues.
But I'm agreeing with you. And I agree with you 100%. I'm saying they need a positive label.
Instead of disorder.
Get rid of the disorder and the disaffective. You're not broken. You're just different. And that's okay. And also, especially when we talk about something like autistic or schizophrenia, gigantic spectrum of these. And we've all seen like the savant types, which then we pull out. Oh, this is no, everybody's a savant. They're just doing it differently, right? We just didn't get to hear their music that's playing, or see the artwork that they're creating elsewhere in their life.
Can I throw a pitch in right here?
Yes.
One of the songs on my record is called "Feelings for Reasons." And it is exactly about this. And it's based on a book that was recently published a few months ago called Good Reasons for Bad Feelings by Randy Nesse. And he is one of the founders of the field of evolutionary medicine, which looks at where physiological diseases come from the perspective of fitness trade-offs between, for instance, longevity and reproduction. So organisms will have the option to sort of live fast and die young and try to reproduce quickly, or to conserve resources and invest in offspring more. And you can't necessarily say one of those strategies is better than the other strategy, because it's all context dependent in terms of like adapting to environmental situations. So his original book was called Why We Get Sick, and I did a whole record about that, Rap Guide to Medicine. But the new one is about psychiatric. Now we've just problematized the word disorders, but what is currently considered disorders under the DSM, and was a couple of things about it just to add to the conversation. One is that most of these behavioral quote unquote disorders are just extreme cases of adaptive things that everybody has. And the degree to which they're influenced by genes appears to be like literally like one gene has one degree of additional influence, and everyone has genes for OCD, and everyone has genes for anxiety, and everyone has genes for addiction. And if you get enough of the certain combination of them, then you'll get, for instance, autism seems to be mostly inherited, and other ones are mostly environmental. But you can make an evolutionary case for why humans have these, and why it was beneficial to have the capacity for anxiety. And the idea of a fitness cliff can help you understand why some people, like, let's say it's beneficial to stack the anxiety sort of like sensitivity genes or capacities in the brain, but there's a certain point at which they tip into completely dysfunctional behavior, but there's benefits right up until you get to the cliff. And in genetics, you've got these fitness cliffs, right, where there's like everything is more adaptive until you get past one threshold point, and then there's a crash of adaptiveness. And so that, like, from an explanatory perspective, I think that's powerful. And I think in general, like one of the lines in my lyrics is like, it helps to know the ultimate reason. Like if you have a situation where you're like, why can't I function like most people seem to be able to function when, in these kind of contexts, to be able to say, like, this is from our ancestry as a species, and people, exactly, everyone's different. We are on spectrums, and people that fall closer to this end, it's because of the adaptive benefits throughout the history of our species that led people to be in that, diagnostic category. I think that's beneficial psychologically and for treatment.
That, and then to throw the insane level on top of that, we've also discovered that regardless of your genes, the expression of those and are totally related to your microbiome. And so then you're like, okay, I have these genes for anxiety, but actually, if I had the microbiome of the ancestor that developed these, it might not be anxiety at all. It might have a completely different affect that would be being expressed through my personality if my microbiome was what the ancestor was when they were developing that to that edge. And now my microbiome change is what's pushing me over the edge.
But if you try to prescribe somebody with like a severe anxiety disorder also to then have a fecal oral transplant, that feels like insult to injury unless you put it in the right kind of flavor.
It might sound that way, but we were covering this now 2-year study where doing that with kids with autism showed a 50% reduction in the symptoms. So we are as every geneticist will tell me, genes aren't the answer that we hoped they were. They're not. There's
part of the
story. Now it's the RNA.
Part
Now it's the mRNA. Now it's a transport protein. Now it's another.
Just one quick fun fact on that last topic. When people need to have an oral fecal transplant and then donors are suggested to them, they don't want their siblings to be a donor. They don't want strangers to be a donor. In fact, the only person that people are generally fine with being a donor of a fecal transplant is a spouse.
Ah.
I mean,
But they
there's
probably
lots
share
of
too much
variously-
microbiome
Yeah,
anyway.
exactly.
They probably share too much anyway.
Yeah.
Now you need a whole different household.
Or there's
I
a
think-
metaphorical version of eating feces that being married puts you in anyway. So then you might.
Or you know what? I
Okay.
didn't used to have this.
Justin,
I
nope.
guess I should call the ex. I didn't. This is a new problem. I should call the ex. She'll love this because then I will literally. Never mind.
All right. I think this brings us definitely to Blair's Animal Corner.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, milliped, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. There's Animal Corner.
What you got, Blair?
Well, we were talking about brains. We were talking about families. We were talking about memories, good or bad. A new study from Dartmouth looked at fruit flies, Drosophila melanogaster, and their ability to influence the phenotypes of their offspring. We've talked about inherited memory in the past, but this study in particular jumped out at me, or perhaps flew out at me as a fruit fly. When exposed to parasitoid wasps, which happen to deposit their eggs into and kill the larvae of fruit flies, these fruit flies were known to shift their preference to food containing ethanol as an egg-laying substrate. Why? Because ethanol protects their larvae from wasp infection. In this study, the fruit flies were cohabitated with female wasps for 4 days before the researchers collected their eggs. The embryos were separated into 2 cohorts. So they took the eggs, so they never hatched near mom. One was exposed to wasps and one was unexposed. That was the control, of course, and developed to maturity without any contact with adult flies or wasps. One group was used to propagate the next generation, and the other was analyzed for ethanol preference. They found that the original wasp-exposed flies laid about 94% of their eggs on ethanol food, and that this persisted in their offspring, even though the offspring had never had direct interaction with wasps. The ethanol preference was less potent in the first generation. 73% of them laid their eggs on ethanol food, but the inherited ethanol preference persisted for 5 generations, gradually reverting back to pre-wasp exposed levels.
So it's isn't it? This is it's groundbreaking. It's amazing because we've talked about this for so long.
Yeah.
And we keep seeing examples of it. But in a sense, we've had a word for this for forever, albeit unscientific, which was instinct.
It is and it isn't. So in my understanding of instinct, like when I talk about the instinct of an alligator, because you can raise it in a bathtub, not that you should, and then you could release it into the wild, not that you should, but it will immediately act like a crocodile or an alligator. That is instincts. That is an ingrained how to be the animal that you are key. This is different because you have flies that were around wasps, which is something they should avoid, and flies that were not around wasps. And only the ones that were around wasps then laid eggs where those babies avoided wasps. So this is different because it's not instincts across the board for fruit flies to avoid wasps. It only happened when mom was exposed.
But those instincts that we see across species had to get learned at some point. And that's my point. It's like we assume it just was super slow. This was just a thing that through selection or somehow, but
Selection. Yeah. Well,
maybe
because
it's
it would make sense for it to work in selection, because if fruit flies that lived in wasp-laden territory didn't lay their eggs in ethanol, they would get destroyed. So
it's the
those
ones that
babies
just have
wouldn't
the
happen.
inherent
So
preference.
there's a very clear potential for a mechanism of natural selection. But in this case, that's not what's happening.
Yeah, this is specifically the memory being inherited. This is not those specific, like it's not you laid your eggs by ethanol, so you survived
Right.
because this is an experimental situation. But it could have
haven't-
led to instinct through
You didn't
natural
say
selection.
epigenetics, but this is understood to be an epigenetic effect. Is that right?
Yes. So
Yes.
so the next part of the study, the one I wanted to mention, is that what makes this particularly interesting, because we've talked before about just kind of memories, proof of memories, especially in crows. I love talking about crows and their memory propagation. But so in this research, they were able to determine one of the critical factors that drove this behavior change, and that was depression of neuropeptide F, and it's imprinted in a specific region of the female fly's brain. This change, which was based in part on visual signals, was required to initiate transgenerational inheritance, and both male and female progeny were able to pass on the ethanol preference to their offspring. So yes, this is indeed an epigenetic trait that has changed specifically for how the fly's brain is structured. So in one side, this is just amazing in the role of epigenetics and inherited memory and learning more about that. But on the other side, in the kind of human selfish side, the researchers hope that these findings may in the far future, lead to greater insights on the role that parental experiences play across generations in humans, such as in diseases or drug and alcohol disorders. Because there's a potential there. I mean, I certainly know people who stay far, far, far away from alcohol because they had family that had issues with it in the past. And you wonder if it's just the stories they were told growing up, or if there's something else in their body telling them to stay away.
They're complex. It's hard, hard even for them to know. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So fruit fly memories can be passed. And then I have some amazingly good news, potentially, from the world of endangered species. So as somebody who spends, a fair amount of time talking about endangered species, one of the things that we do in zoos is when an animal is on its way towards extinction or is even functionally extinct, like in the case of the northern white rhino, which is what this study is about, there's actually only 2 northern white rhinos left in the world. Both are females. So guess what? Uh-oh. Not a lot happening there. One of the things that zoos do is they hold on to specimens from males specifically, for the most part, but also females. We have sperm, we have eggs that we can keep on file, kind of like the seed vault. So this is like the animal seed vault, right? So that in future, if we have the right technology, we could potentially rebuild certain populations. So yes, Justin, this may in fact apply to mammoths someday as well. But for right now, I'm focusing on the northern white rhino. Okay. This is a new study from Europe. This was with a southern white rhino at the Chorzow Zoo in Poland. They were able to successfully transfer a test tube rhino embryo back into a female whose eggs were fertilized in vitro. So they fertilized egg and sperm in essentially a test tube, and then they were able to implant that in a live rhino. So this is a southern white rhino. So this is not the species that I was saying is functionally extinct. Remember, we only have 2 female northern white rhinos. We do have some male northern white rhino specimens that are on file that could potentially be used for this in the future. But the proof of concept that the IVF transfer worked in the southern white rhino has promise. So the female northern white rhinos are not able to reproduce. I don't know if they're past reproducing age or if they've tried in the past. I'm guessing they've tried and they just had bad luck. But the idea here is that you could take the eggs from these ladies and the sperm that we have on file in vitro, fertilize those eggs, and implant in a southern white rhino surrogate.
So the thing is, though, are the females, if they're making eggs, they're viable, right? The idea would be like, why use up the two of them that you've got and make two babies when you could take eggs and spread them out to lots of surrogates?
So so that is something that we could do. The main issue is that the research team is waiting for permission from the Kenyan government to harvest the eggs from the female northern white rhinos. It's not quite as easy as harvesting sperm. So it's something that has to be approved since it is a surgical procedure. So they're waiting on that paperwork right now. But the kind of two caveats here. One is that the ultrasound tests so far in this southern white rhino show the embryo is growing, but it is so far smaller than expected. So they don't know what's going to happen in the end here. This is proof of concept that it implanted. So it's growing so far, which is really good. It's a step in the right direction. The other caveat, and kind of an exciting caveat, is that we've talked previously on the show about turning different cells into gametes. And so this is their eventual next step, is they're hoping that they can turn preserved skin cells from a dead rhino into eggs or sperm so that then they can have a greater genetic diversity as well if they were trying to bring this species back.
Yeah, it would be much easier to preserve genetic information as opposed to gametes. So if you want to preserve genetic diversity, that genetic information is what you want. You don't just want the gametes. And so this goal of producing gametes, being able to be able to make synthetic cells, be able to use skin samples if you have them. But even if going beyond that, it's having the genetic information and printing a gamete.
Wouldn't that be great? Yes. And then you can get really crazy and you can try to use CRISPR to adjust the genome so that you have a good representative kind of genetically diverse group. You
use a modern relative of the extinct species and use CRISPR to take out the more modern mutations, the genetic changes, and to put in the older ones so that you can create that older species once again. But you have the gametes and you're like, there you go. Now we'll use the animal as a surrogate and you've got the animal. But we'll have a lamb bag.
But suddenly you've kind of wrong. Well, now you've got a woolly rhino.
Be a brand new species.
Regardless, I just thought I would throw it out there. I know it's in the preliminary stages still, and there are a lot of steps to saving species that are on the brink of extinction or already extinct. But this is actually, I feel like it's a really big step in the right direction, and it's very exciting.
It is. Now tell me this last story about spider aggression.
Okay.
This is fascinating.
It's a pretty quick one.
Let's move this forward.
So this is a study looking at why spiders are so darned aggressive. So in the spider world, only about 30 of the almost 50,000 species of spiders have been described or characterized as social. And so most spiders out there like to live alone. They are lone operatives. They are also very aggressive. And so there's been this question in the zoological entomological community for a long time. Does the aggression breed solitary natures, or does being solitary make you aggressive? And so kind of that first one was the original expectation was, well, if you're mean to everybody, no one wants to be around you. So if you're aggressive, you will be solitary. But this study found quite the opposite. So in this study, they used a combination of behavioral, chemical, and modeling approaches to look at the spiderlings of solitary species. Yes, that is a baby spider is called a spiderling. I love it so much. Yes. So they had some spiderlings in social isolation and some that were in social contexts. And when they were in social contexts, there were no aggressive interactions observed. And when they were isolated, they were very aggressive. So it does appear that being alone is what makes them aggressive. So they're dispersed when they disperse out into the world and they're far from other spiders, they become aggressive as a result of that, is what it looks like. The question there,
Spider friends.
yeah. So the question there is what is the trigger? And their hypothesis actually is a lot like what happens with dogs. If you don't bring your puppy out to the dog park, they'll end up being aggressive to other dogs because they don't know how to talk to other dogs, basically, right? So their favorite hypothesis is that isolation leads spiderlings to forget the social cues emitted by siblings, and that just by being alone, they lose the spiderling language.
That happens to me when I'm at home working alone in my basement. And then I look outside and I'm like, who's that person parking their car in front of my house?
Yes. Get off my lawn.
And it's your husband.
And
Yeah.
Your husband.
Yeah, and he comes out, he's
That's
like,
the sad
Kiki,
part.
and you're like, what?
I don't need a husband. Oh my goodness. No. All right, let's run through a couple of really quick stories for the end of the show. This one I thought was really fun. Spermine and spermidine. These are some smelly compounds that, I bet from the name you can tell where we first isolated them. That's right, sperm. They are odorant compounds that give sperm its smell, and at least in humans. And for the first time, Michigan State University researchers publishing in PLOS Biology have discovered that spermine is important to mate selection in lampreys, which can be an issue because in some rivers, lampreys are pest species. And if we could figure out how to make it so the females can't smell the sperm, maybe they wouldn't mate as much.
Yeah, that would be good.
That would be good. Yeah. So anyway, spermine makes the sperm stink. Nice. Smells like love for lampreys.
Yuck.
Yeah. No. Okay. Give me your quick stories.
So I have a lovely story about Florida man. Florida man finds shark tooth, 25-year-old shark tooth in his foot, and it is tested for DNA. So this man was bitten on Flagler Beach in 1994, but just recently, a little blister-like bulge on his foot. He picked at it and found a piece of a shark tooth.
Wow.
It was actually sent to a shark research lab in Florida, tested for DNA, and in fact, they were able to figure out what kind of shark bit him. It was a black-tip reef shark, which is what usually it is out in Florida. But only about 30% of shark bites are identified which species it's from. So this would be helpful in figuring that out if there are teeth left over, which often there are because shark teeth are not well anchored and fall right out. But so this is an interesting bit for that reason, but also because this thing was 24 years in this man's foot being attacked by his very own immune system. And still there was enough DNA left in there to figure out what shark bit him.
Baby shark, doot, 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 doot.
No.
Baby shark, doot, 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 doot. Okay.
By the year 2050, London's climate will resemble Madrid's. Paris will be more like Canberra. Stockholm like Budapest. Moscow like Sofia, according to a new analysis published Wednesday that relied on the most optimistic projections. They say changes will be even more dramatic for the world's major tropical cities like Kuala Lumpur, Jakarta, and Singapore, which will experience unprecedented climate conditions resulting in extreme weather events and intense droughts. Studies carried out by scientists from ETH Zurich and published in PLOS One on Sunday. Using the most optimistic predictions. They looked at 520 cities and kind of paired them up to where they were kind of moving.
It's all going to get hot.
Woo, it's going to get hot in here. Also, a team of Clemson University scientists have achieved a breakthrough in the genetics of senescence. Senescence is that thing what cells do when they decide they've had enough of being part of a thing.
It's the expiration
Expiration date. So this is published in the Plant Cell Journal. The implications of it, they've done this in corn. So what they basically designed is a way for, corn has like lots of varieties. Some of them stay green a lot longer than others and produce bigger, better, more sugars. But plant breeders have been trying to get these things, these stay green plants to be better and better and better. And Rajan Sikon, who's a plant geneticist, assistant professor at College Sciences Department of Genetics and Biochemistry at Clemson University, has identified 600 genes that appear to determine that affect that the plant breeders have been searching for, breeding for. Basically, now having unlocked the code to be able to produce different versions of this. And he says he thinks that this is actually going to translate very well into other cereal type things. So we're talking about increased, he will say it best. The ultimate goal is to help the planet and feed the growing world. With ever worsening climate, shrinking land and water, and increasing population, food security is the major challenge faced by mankind, Sakon says. So he's he's been working on this stuff for many, many years, of course, and is now delivering on his promise to make the world a better place.
With corn.
Not just
With
the
corn
flavor
and
saver
rice.
tomato,
And rice.
but now the stay green corn. Yeah. Stay green grains. Oh my goodness. We have done it. Now, before we go and do the end of the show, I had spoken with Baba, and I don't know if Baba's been listening to these stories. He's piped in a couple of times to this conversation. But we were wondering if maybe you wanted to flow a little freestyle rap for us related to this science conversation that we've been having over the last 45 minutes.
Okay, I'm down.
All right.
I stay quiet, but I pay attention. I've taken 3 pages of basic notes,
Wow.
just key phrases that you guys said over the last bit. And there we go. You got the lampreys on the last one there, and the evergreen corn.
Oh, that's exciting.
So I'm going to try to encapsulate all the themes from our hour-and-a-half conversation in a freestyle right now.
Whoop, whoop.
So, and I even have a beat all queued up. This is a beat from Sea from Space from my new record. How's that? Is that coming through?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Yo, it's Baba Brinkman, and I'm known to rip it up. My gamma rays are coming straight from the Crab Nebula. Can't you even see? I speak like MCs do. Check it out. Those are high frequency grooves indeed. These are the rap flows. They could test it in the water pools on Tibetan plateaus. Can't you even see? Yeah, I make the music. Unlike the Asians with the tooth that's three-rooted, see? Like the Tibetans. This is the way that we're scientifically setting. Check it. Yes, I am repping. I'm kicking it. I guess they got that trait originally from Denisovans. See? Yeah, I'm rapping the poems. You can feel it right down deep in your metabolome. This is the way that I rip it. I got no chorus. It's just a freestyle. It's all about data storage inside your DNA, because we've got that espionage. I'm just kicking lots of random hip-hop. Check it out now. This is how we're gonna go, though. Baba Brinkman, my species is Homo sapien. Back 210,000 years. It means we found our way out of Africa clear. New evidence can demonstrate it. 210,000 years ago, I guess we just made it. Up into Greece, I speak so easily. This is how I'm gonna have to talk about gene frequency. Yes, that is the data that we be storing. Right now, I put people to sleep like they're snoring, or maybe wake them up. Check it out, I'm live. I am not believing in the DSM-5. Why? Because it makes the disorders too basic and disregards all of our human situations. What are you going through? PTSD? That is a little bit too easy, if you ask me. No, it's about how recently we're grieving. See, that is something I can believe in. It's adaptive. I'm freestyle rapping. I'm just masking, taking all these ideas right now and trying to smash them. Yes, indeed. I'm a rapper that's keen. You can smell it on me like my spermine. Indeed, that is the smell of sex. I am trying to just share some of my intelligence sets, and people listen to like hip hop like back in the day. I use it as a mating cue like a lamprey, a jawless fish. Can't you even see? They are not a recent ancestor of us or all of this. Vertebrate styles. This is how I'm freaking out. Check it out. I'm going to have to just speak it now about a florable incredible man, a Florida man with a shark tooth in his foot. They got the D out of that. It was real good. I'm starting to stutter. But even if I make a mistake over the rhythm, I am introducing evolutionary randomness into the system. See, these are mutations, mistakes that I'm making. This is not hard. I will bite rappers like a black-tipped reef shark up in Florida, and you can extract it. It's massive. Check it out. Pretty soon London will be like Madrid in the future when the climate increases the heat. This is not something that I'm speaking from me. It is not just an opinion. I am just trying to tell you scientific facts and try to get you into them. See what I'm saying? 600 genes inside a cord cell could teach us how to make it stay green. I'm mad keen on us using that technology to feed a lot of people. That would be dope. Can't you see? Come on. This is freestyle rapping. I'm saying reform psychiatry. Make it happen. From now on, we'll call it a normal trauma reaction instead of a disorder. That's the diagnosis. People try to figure out human nature. It's not hopeless. We can figure it out now. It's the aversion. I am kind of putting it into a lot of freestyle verses, and somehow the fruit flies had ethanol aversion. Why? Because of the wasp. I just kick it. My freestyles get in your brain. I'm parasitic, laying my eggs just like an alien syndrome. This is me, Baba Brinkman. I'm bringing the info. Can't you even see the epigenetic effect? It's the way that we break into the basics. In the fruit flies, you can follow it for 5 generations. You can find 13 generations in a nematode. Maybe 1 or 2 as far as people go. Mice, maybe 2 or 3. It's mad genetic. Can't you even test it? Yes, is how I said it. I think it's probably still Darwinistic. Why? Because epigenetic is a form of adaptive behavior that we can do to make it happen. Wait a second. It's phenotypically plastic. Can't you even see? Represented in my rapping. Yeah, that's going to be dope. This here is my flow. Come on, people. We got to save the northern white rhino. I mean, that would be dope. People, yes. Let's get it up in the clinic of IVF. Can't you even see? That's how we'll make it happen. Like the IVF clinics in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. That would be really dope. To get social. This is Baba Brinkman coming with the sapien homo. Dope flow. Can't you even see? This is my show. Right now, I'm thinking not like a spider that's social. Me, I'm just trying to test it. I'm kind of gangster. A solitary spider that's aggressive. So don't mess with the flow that I'm bringing. Baba Brinkman, Spider-Man, I'm web slinging.
Nice.
I try to make it as comprehensive as I can.
Oh my God.
Amazing.
And what's amazing is Bob's going to be doing that for the after show every night.
Yeah.
For the rest of, and going back because we have like 700 and something episodes that we've already done.
Yeah.
We're gonna go back and do a retrospective of each.
There we go.
That was really awesome. Wow.
I'm so impressed. 3 pages, you kept going, and
Yeah. To be able to put that together while listening to the show in real time and being able to participate in the show at the same time. That's
I can't write down any rhymes, but I write down references and they prompt the rhyme cues.
Wow.
And in my off-Broadway shows, I do a version of this where I ask the audience to bring up any scientific questions they're interested in, and then it segues into a whole freestyle section of the rap.
Wow.
Nice.
that's fun. It's also a way you can bring in the audience and get them to interact with you, and so it becomes this kind of group created rap. They help you out.
Yeah. Spontaneous freestyles. It's the most accessible part of hip hop culture. People that say I don't like rap will love a freestyle.
Yes.
And the other thing is too, it's like I remember lyrics a lot better than I will remember a lot of other things that are. If there was like a Cliff Notes version of any subject that was rapped, I would actually have a better chance of forming memories from it, because that's how my brain is sort of trained to listen to the lyrics and to hear them and to process them.
It's the Schoolhouse Rock kind of Tom Lehrer rationale for science communication, but I could make a case that rap is a better suited musical form than any other for this process, because it packs more information and it's also like a storytelling art form. Like most other genres of music are speaking to emotions first and like information channel second, but I'd say rap is really about like getting a message across.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy and creating that freestyle. That was it's just so impressive, and for sharing with us. I hope that people will come to our website. We'll have the link there for your website and for your Bandcamp, so that people can access that if they find this show, to make it easy for them. But once again, Can you give people the Bandcamp if they're interested?
Yeah, on bababrinkman.bandcamp.com. The new record is called See from Space. And actually, here's a brand new premiere that's going to be for your watches only, which is that in my inbox right before the show started landed the final edit of the video for Feelings for Reasons, about how psychiatry should be reformed around evolutionary principles. So that video is about to be uploaded as soon as I sign off, and your viewers can check it out on my YouTube channel, within half an hour from now.
Love it. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, Baba. It's been wonderful. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you to everyone in our chat room for being a part of the show. Thank you to Fada for helping out with show notes and with social media. Thank you to Gord for help with the chat room. Thank you to Identity4 for recording the show. And thank you to our Patreon sponsors. Thank you to Paul Disney, Richard Onimus, Ed Dyer, Ed, Andy Gross, Stu Pollock, Philip Shane, Ken Hayes, Harrison Prather, Charlene Henry, Joshua Fury, Steve DeBell, Alex Wilson, Tony Steele, Craig Landon, Mark Mazzaros, Jack, Matthew Litwin, Jason Roberts, Bill K, Bob Calder, Time Jumper 319, Eric Knapp, Richard, Brian Condon, Dave Neighbor, Gene Tellier, John Griddy, David Williams, Corinne Benton, Adam LaJoy, Sarah Chavis, Rodney, Tiffany Boyd, John Bertram, Mountain Sloth, Seth O'Gradney, Stephen Alberon, John Ratnaswamy, Dave Friedel, Daryl Myshak, Andrew Swanson, Paul Ronovich, Sue Doster, Dave Wilkinson, Ben Bignell, Richard Porter, Noodles, Kevin Reardon, Christoph Zucknarek, Ashish Pants, Ulysses Adkins, Artyom, Rick Ramus, Paul, John McKee, Jason Olds, Brian Carrington, Christopher Dreyer, Lisa Slazuski, Jim Drapeau, Greg Riley, Sean Lamb, Ben Rothig, Steve Leisman, Kurt Larson, Rudy Garcia, Marjorie, Gary S., Robert, Greg Briggs, Brendan Minish, Christopher Rappin, Flying Out, Aaron Luthen, Matt Sutter, Mark Hessenflow, Kevin Parachan, Byron Lee, and E.O. Thank you for your support on Patreon.
Could have been a rapper.
I know, she's like really natural.
Either that or the Micro Machines ad from my childhood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for your support. If you are interested in supporting us, you can find information at TWIS.org. Click the Patreon link. Also, remember that you can help us out simply by telling your friends about TWIS. On next week's show, we're going to talk about what makes fundamental constants so constant with Louis Pastekka. He is a physicist. And once again, we'll be broadcasting live online at 8 p.m. Pacific time at twis.org/live. You can catch us live and join the chat room if that's what you're interested in. But if you're not able to make it, don't worry. It's all archived. You can catch it at our YouTube channel, YouTube/This Week in Science, or just twis.org for the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for enjoying the show. TWIS also is available on iTunes. That's where you would Google to find the podcast. Also, anything Apple Marketplacey, just Google us and we'll be right there.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, including links to Baba's SoundCloud or Bandcamp, that's what it is, and all the other things. Show notes will be available on our website. That is www.twis.org. That's TWIS.org. And while you're there, you can also make comments and start conversations with the hosts and other listeners.
Or you can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twis.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in the subject line. Otherwise, what will happen, Blair?
Oh, you'll be spam filtered into oblivion.
You can also hit us up on the Twitter where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to you tonight, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. Science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer, and it shouldn't be news, that what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. 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 And This Week in Science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say, and if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 Got a laundry list of items I want to address, from stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. But how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say, and if you've learned anything from the words that we've said, then please just remember it's all in your head. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.